Hello, everybody. This is Jennifer Fox of Fox Property Management, and it is March of 2026. And this Fox Talks is about the hidden cost of owning a property in Colorado. So, a lot of people think it's great to be an investor, and it is, but it's really important to be thinking about all of the things that go into being an investor, because what you don't want to do is find yourself as an investor and then not be in a position to actually take care of the property the way that you would want to. So when investors are evaluating a rental property, they typically focus on the purchase price, the rent potential, mortgage payments, taxes, and insurance. So, if you're an investor who's putting 25% down, interest rates are a really big deal to you as well. Otherwise, you're doing the numbers based on these sort of things, including potentially HOA costs. In Colorado's current regulatory and operating environment, many of the true costs of ownerships are a little bit less visible. So today I want to talk you through some of the hidden costs that impact your return on investment and how strategic management can help mitigate that. Profitability isn't just about the gross rent, but it's also about the net performance. So how does this property do over time, and risk, regulation, and then ultimately the reality of it, so that you're prepared and you're emotionally prepared, financially prepared, and know what to expect as you go into this. So first, vacancy and turnover cost. Vacancy is not just lost rent, right? I mean, a typical turnover in Colorado can include 2 to 4 weeks of vacancy. In our particular case, if we're between tenants, it may only be a day, but getting used to the fact that there could be some vacancy, especially as you're onboarding the property, is really smart, just to be aware of that. And there can be some vacancy also if you realize that your property might need some updates. So maybe there needs to be some time to replace flooring between tenants, or to get a fresh coat of paint, or something else that really is best without tenants in the property. So on occasion, we'll do a 1 week or some sort of vacancy between outgoing tenant and ingoing tenant. So you want to be prepared for that so that you can take care of your property. And then also keeping in mind that through that transition, there can be other expenses that come with a tenant transition. So I think that's just an important part to think about. Deferred maintenance capital expenditures. So many owners underestimate the long-term capital costs. So for example, when you buy this property, you take this property on, what's the state of the roof? Will there need to be a roof replacement? Exterior paint, siding wear, HVACs from, furnace, air conditioning, hot water heaters, irrigation and draining issues. So drainage issues. So like, how is your drainage away from the foundation of your property if you have a single family home, for example. And then digging a little deeper where your tenant may not care, but you might, is foundational movement issues, expansive soil. How's your foundation going? Again, tenants are less likely to be concerned about that, but if you went to sell the property, you would want to be aware of the state of your foundation. So, our hope is that by, instituting some preventative maintenance, especially with those big systems like HVAC, that by servicing it once or twice a year, you help to have those systems have a longer term lifespan. However, it's important to realize that some of these things just are what they are. A roof just over time gets older, and over time has wear and tear. We do want to pay attention to whether you've got damage based on a storm or whether it's just wear and tear over time. But it's just good to be planning for those kind of bigger expenses. And not having it be so reactive, right? As you kind of know it's coming, and you're planning for it, you're talking to asset manager about it, then it's not such a shock when the change needs to happen or the decision needs to be made. The other thing is that Colorado landlord law has changed over the years, and so there's some new enforcements that we have to follow. Stricter notice requirements. There's extended eviction timelines, sorts of income protections, habitability enforcement, security deposit return deadlines, increased tenant legal protections. All those things come into play, and so if we're not in full compliance on our side and with you, there's possibility of attorney's fees and treble damages if a deposit's not returned on time, lost rent. There's all sorts of possibilities. And so we take our job very seriously to make sure that we're in compliance on everything we're doing on your behalf. And some things you can't do anything about. If a tenant is in eviction because they're not paying rent and we're doing everything we can, you will most likely have some losses associated with that. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we do the best we can on the front end to put the best possible tenants in place. And then if something happens, that we work collaboratively with you to reduce your risk and loss of rent through that process. So legal missteps are one of the most underestimated costs of self-management, and our hope is that under management, this is something that is much more predictable, and you can rest assured that we're looking out for your best interest here. Below market rent and pricing, a lot of landlords who are outside of management oftentimes underprice their property, partially because they don't want to go through the process of trying to rent it and all the different showings and the process there. So we find that when we take on new properties under management, oftentimes the rental rate is under market. So there's a possibility that under management, you might have an increase in rental rate. Pricing can be more emotional for some people because they just don't want to deal with it. And so that can happen. But also, you might also have kept rent flat for a really long time because you don't want to rock the boat. You want to have a good relationship with your tenant. It feels uncomfortable. You don't have a middleman representing you. So that's what we see oftentimes when we take property under management. And so our hope for you is that when you are under management working with our team, that we're paying a lot of attention to what the rates are. We're working with you to get the best possible rate, but also to put your tenants in a good position where they're having consistent small increases that keep them up with market value. So there's not a big shock to the system with the, as your expenses rise, their expenses rise, but it's not all at one time. So, that's another area where, you can find that you might have some costs associated with, let's say you've modeled out that you're going to have a 5% increase every year, but one year you don't. So that's something to just be prepared for as an investor, that you're prepared for, that rent rates may stay stable, or they might only go up a little bit. Meanwhile, some of your other expenses may increase. The other thing that's really happening, it's a big story in HOA management, is the increase of cost of insurance. And a lot of homeowners and landlords are seeing it too in their premiums. So insurance premiums in Colorado have risen significantly due to the wildfire risk, hail claims, and that's just, we know what's been happening, in the past years. And I think when we had the Marshall fire, that was a big one. And then every year, hail is just a huge impact on our community. So I think that's something to just be aware of, is that we're seeing that utility costs continue to increase. HOA dues can increase unexpectedly, both with insurance and utility cost changes. So just planning for that basic, inflation in your operations just is smart for you, so that you're not caught too far off guard. Unfortunately, some people are getting caught off guard because they can't possibly manage, or imagine the increases that they're seeing. But in most cases, they're small and they're incremental and they're pretty predictable. And if you stay in touch with your HOA and you're following what's happening, you will know in advance what to expect. The other hidden cost that's not financial when you're self-managing is just the emotional cost for a lot of people. So our hope as a management company is that we sort of take this pressure off you. It's the job we do. It's the work we do. We're staffed to do it. It's not emotional for us, so we take it on in a different way. But when you're self-managing, late night maintenance calls, conflict resolution, lease enforcement, court appearances, vendor coordination, record keeping, all that can really take a toll. And that's what we hope to take off your plate. And one of the values of hiring management, and it's a cost that isn't financial to you, but it is a cost to you emotionally. And the hope is that through having professional management, this is greatly reduced. Time has value, so the hope is you have more time, and that's valuable to you, and that stress has a cost, and you have a little bit less stress because there's someone acting on your behalf, and we hope for that too. And then probably one of the really big and unpredictable elements of managing a property, owning an investment property, is the cost of a tenant who doesn't perform. So, we have pretty strict criteria, and we work very closely as a team to evaluate applicants and put the best possible applicants into properties. And so, a bad applicant or a tenant that doesn't perform can be months and months of non-payment, legal fees, property damage, turnover, expenses, all sorts of things. A reputation risk. I mean, if we put somebody in place who doesn't perform and they just want to go on and make it about us, that can be bad too. So, the idea is that one eviction can erase an entire year of profit for you as an investor. And so having professional vetting really reduces that risk and hopefully puts people in your property that that are in a position to perform the terms of the lease. And so, it is our intention, hope, and obviously we can't control everything, and we can't completely control that a tenant who starts with us and is perfectly qualified remains perfectly qualified, but we hope that what we bring is a much higher level of security in that area and saving you money there. So, from a real return on investment, question, it's like owning rental property in Colorado can be a very powerful wealth building strategy for you. And the real question is, it isn't just what is the rent going to be. It's what's the net return after vacancy, regulation, maintenance, inflation, and risk. And and our job is to look at, how do we help you reduce those hidden costs? How do we protect you through compliance? How do we stabilize your tenancy? How do we prevent or preserve the value of your asset with recommendations and improvements? And how do we help you improve the long-term return on investment? So the goal is for us to work with you in a partnership that helps you to have the best possible performance of this investment, and that there are things that will happen with your property, and for you to be prepared for that so that you feel not surprised by things that come up, but instead ready to work with us to solve it. So how do we find a way forward, right? How do we find a way through challenges to the other side so that we can help make sure that your investment property is a great return on investment? So we appreciate you. We appreciate you choosing us. We appreciate you passing along our information to other people who might need services like ours to take the stress off and to give them the return on investment they need as well. And we look forward to years of working with you and answering any questions you might have. Please reach out to your asset manager if you want to do some planning. I know that a lot of that's happening right now. And so we're always available. And then as usual, I am always available to have a conversation with you about what's happening with your property, what opportunities there are. And I enjoy those conversations, and I enjoy the connection, and I look forward to connecting with you. Have a great day.